Hi, everybody, and welcome to our next panel because we have plenty of material to cover here in battling deepfakes. Do we have everybody on who should be on currently? Looks good. Terrific. Thank you. Welcome. Delving into the ongoing industry efforts to combat deepfakes, understanding the scale of the issue, predicting its trajectory. I want to get things started here because we're on a tight timeline and to say welcome and thank you to everybody for joining us. There's a news item I want to mention to start the process here that reported a news article out of CNN said a finance worker at a multinational firm was tricked into paying out $25 million to fraudsters posing as using deepfake technology to pose as the company's chief financial officer in a video conference call, according to Hong Kong police. So here we are. We now live in a world where not only are deepfakes being used against celebrities and politicians, like the Taylor Swift deepfake pornography story from January and the robocalls of President Biden, but also real millions of dollars are being stolen through the use of convincing deepfakes. I want to start off by addressing this first question to Duncan from SAG-AFTRA. But before I do, I want to say to my panelists, I want to do a quick round. Okay, so we have Duncan Crabtree-Ireland from SAG-AFTRA. Hello, Duncan. National Director and Chief Negotiator. We have Alex Shannon from CAA. Hi, Alex. Give us a wave. We have Walter Pasquarelli, a leading generative AI expert and policy expert in that space. We have Bruce MacCormack. Give us a wave, Bruce. He's a founding member of Project Origin and also a member of C2PA and with Neural Transform, his company. And Richard Atkinson. Give us a wave, Richard, from the CDSA. So we've got a terrific bunch of panelists here today. I gave us an opening remark on like a news item, a hot news item with regards to where deepfakes are being used for fraudulent purposes. So I want to put this one to Duncan first. Duncan, big year last year with the strike, negotiation, we're talking about digital replicas. You yourself were deepfaked, correct? In a situation that happened last fall.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, and so you said it gave you a new understanding, a new about the power of these technologies. From your perspective, what are the financial, legal, and social implications to the entertainment industry? And I want to also, after you answer, have the question go around to the rest of the panel. Go ahead.
Sure. I mean, since you mentioned it, I do just want to say, I think panels like this and having people with a lot of expertise in this area is absolutely essential. I will say, I spent years battling deepfakes on behalf of our members, but just this past November, during the ratification campaign on our contract from the TV theatrical negotiations and strike, someone made a deepfake of me and had a video of me out there advocating against the contract, telling people to vote against the contract that I myself had spent, a year preparing for and negotiating. And it just has it hits differently when you see yourself out there saying something that you really don't believe in, using your face, your voice. And so, not that I encourage people to try it out, but I do just want to say that there is a feeling to it that's hard to get if you haven't experienced it, seeing someone else sort of abuse your persona in that way. And so I think we always have to bring it back to the real human impact. And I think that Will, you really pointed that out in a number of ways, whether it's a financial impact, whether it's an impact on our ability to trust what we see. That has such huge implications for, in our case, our broadcast journalist members in particular, but also really all of us in our society being able to know that that trusted sources are really legitimate trusted sources in the way that we've always done that. So it really, in terms of those implications, obviously there are big financial implications, both to companies, but also to human beings who, being deepfaked, can damage their careers. It can really harm them personally in terms of a feeling of personal abuse. And of course, there's the really dramatic impact on our culture that can come from losing a sense of trust in people and institutions that we've always been able to believe in or rely on or assess. And so I think that, we're going to talk more about this, I believe, during this panel, but really finding ways to make sure that people retain control of their own image and likeness and voice are essential. We have some legislation that we're trying to get enacted at the federal level to provide more tools for that. And also making sure that that as as deepfake technology in other forms is deployed, it is deployed in ways that actually support creative talent, that support human beings, and that make sure that when there's a digital replica, it's not a deepfake in the negative sense of that term, that it is only done with the consent of the people involved and for purposes that help further us culturally and socially.
Thank you. Who wants to go next on this topic?
I'm happy to go next.
Alex, please.
Sure. So we all know, of course, right, AI is advancing quickly, right, and only becoming more prevalent in entertainment. I want to start on the positive side, which is that we're seeing just an explosion of creativity as AI is providing this new set of tools for the creative community, which is unlocking new opportunities. We're seeing creators take these tools, we're seeing them then apply the human element to create this exciting new art form, essentially. And even now in its sort of earliest iteration, the power of the technology to enhance the work of artists is undeniable. We're seeing this opportunity and creativity seeping into every corner of the industry. And Natalie spoke a bit about this on the previous panel, but that could be in the form of adapted performances. So de-aging, localized dubbing, taking a piece of content, a song, and now being able to translate it into local languages. We're seeing this in simulated performances. So if anyone has seen, for example, the ABBA Voyage show in London, that is a net new creative art form. We're also seeing this in personalized content. So localized brand campaigns, conversational avatars, and what we're seeing is this enhanced fan engagement, the ability to reach new audiences, and frankly, the ability to unlock new opportunities that may not exist otherwise. But however promising AI is as a tool, how it applies matters. It's one thing to use generative AI to handle post-production dialogue fixes, as an example, which allows cast and crew to move on to their next project. That's an efficiency, right? It's quite another to use the same technology to put words in the mouth of an actor, a musician, an athlete without their consent. And these technologies are still early stage, and that comes with risks and challenges. So in entertainment, we very much view that an artist's body of work is created and compromised of years of creative decisions about what roles to do, about what brands to support, and importantly, what roles not to do, what brands not to support. This is an expression of their self. And if other people can take that away from them without their consent, that's a real problem. So in order to really think about your question on financial, legal, social implications, it all starts with creating these rules and norms in a way that respects an artist or a person's creative choices, and fundamentally mapping basic ethics and norms into this or on top of this fantastic set of tools. So doing this in the right way with the principles of consent, credit, compensation at the center is imperative to ensuring that there's more opportunity than harm from this angle.
Thank you. Walter. Can you hear us?
I'm still on mute. Hi. Thank you so much, Will. But really good to be here. First of all, I'd just like to say thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here with all these really fantastic panelists. So one of the things that I think I would like to just like echo right away is that in my view, the risks that we're seeing emerging nowadays and the fact that there has been so many new incidents, like the one that you just mentioned earlier, where was sort of a financial institution that now lost $25 million. I don't really think that's a coincidence. And the reason why this is all happening now is primarily for three reasons. One is the advancements that we've seen in generative AI technologies over the past couple of years. Number two is the wider accessibility of these tools that can now be used by pretty much anyone who has access to a laptop. And number three is an increase in sort of high stakes global events, in particular the elections that are happening this year. I think it's about 68 nations that are coming, that are going to the ballot. Now the question is, of course, possibly the one that I get asked most is, what can people actually do to protect themselves? And first of all, I would like to say what I think does not work And the intuitive answer when it comes to detecting deepfakes, as the name, as I've just kind of like now already implied, is detection tools. Detection tools per se, it kind of feels like, yeah, as I said, it kind of makes sense. We have sort of an AI generated image or an AI generated audio clip. We pass it through a system, and then yeah, we get sort of like an answer that says true or false. The truth is that these tools are highly unreliable. And part of the problem is that the same technology that is used for detecting this AI generated content is the same technology that is actually being used to create deepfakes. So it's always a cat and mouse game that happens in these technologies, and it's very difficult. One potential ways for corporations and for organizations, and Bruce will tell you more about this in just a minute, I assume, but it's of course using provenance of media and images, and that's, for example, using standards such as C2PA or digital watermarking. This is all I'm going to say, Bruce. This is your topic, but that's one, in my opinion, the most convincing and logical path forward in order to tackle these. For organizations, there is another couple of things that need to happen there. The first thing is, of course, the education and awareness campaigns. That's something that I've seen almost nothing, surprisingly. And that includes anything from, first of all, showing employees how does actually a deepfake look like, what forms of deepfakes are out there that can be used for phishing or for fraudulent activities. But it also includes other kinds of provisions, such as, for example, having the right kinds of authentication processes and protocols in place, as well as a crisis management process when something like this happens. Mm-hmm. For individuals, the solutions or the approach is probably not very different, perhaps a little bit less formulaic if we want to, but generally having a critical media consumption behavior is something that seems particularly useful. But of course, the education and the advocacy, as well as the awareness campaigns, that's something that really still needs to happen. And I believe this will start probably this year, really like taking off. But that's something of where significantly more work needs to be done as of now.
Thank you, Walter. Bruce, you're up.
Yeah, just to build on what Walter was saying, I guess I'm taking this through a news lens. So what we've been taking a look at in the news business is it's not so much whether it's synthetic or whether it's organically generated images or video. Is it deceptive? And deception and truth are really the axis that we've been taking a look at this on. And we started looking at this about 5 years ago. And I said I was a CBC radio candidate at the time, BBC, the New York Times, and Microsoft. We formed something called Project Origin because we'd come to a fundamental conclusion 5 years ago that detection will never work. It won't work at scale. That's the first thing. And the second thing is, even as it does start to contribute to the solution, it makes the problems worse. As Walter said, the way AI systems train, a good detector will make a better fake. And the whole problem just accelerates in that way. So we've taken a different approach. We've been working with Adobe for a couple of years now. We formed something called the Coalition for Content Provenance and Authenticity. HAND is a member of that. And we are saying we need to prove what's true, not analyze what's false. So the bias and the burden of proof is going to fall on showing what you are creating has an authentic provenance. One of the stats that blew my mind this summer is there's now more, it's been estimated fairly accurately, I think, there's been more synthetic images generated as of June last year than have ever been taken with cameras since the invention of the camera. The odds of you running into something with artificial intelligence as a component of it is now better than finding something that's real. And again, I don't want to cast dispersions. As we said, there's a lot of very good uses for AI generated imagery. It's just when you think it's real and it's not, and you send $26 million, that's a bad thing. When you can move a stock price because a fake earnings announcement comes out, it's a bad thing. When you tell someone that you shouldn't go to the polls tomorrow because of the snowstorm and therefore we're deferring the election when it's not really being deferred, that's a bad thing. So it's that truth deception thing. From the news industry, what we looked at is that what would happen if someone actually fakes our hosts and our sets to amplify disinformation and take all the credibility of a news brand and use it to amplify disinformation. And we said, okay, that's really bad. And that's where we started looking at how do we start to protect it. The C2PA is a standard. It's an open public standard. that's been made available. Think of it as the cut and paste version of validation of content provenance. When something leaves your shop, you sign it cryptographically, effectively using banking technology from a few years ago to certify what you've built. And when you draw something into your input streams and in your ingest processes, you validate it. And that combination of certifying and validation provides a level of safety. So that's what we've been building up. I got to point out, in case no one saw it yesterday, Meta and Facebook just signed up yesterday and said they're going to start validating all their stuff coming in using the C2PA standard. So that was a big announcement.
They joined OpenAI in that adoption of standards. Richard, real quick, because we want to get to Q&A because the questions are coming in. Go ahead.
Yep. I'll go fast. I guess just to elaborate on the example you gave about that example in Hong Kong where the guy was deceived, right? And transferred $25 million. Most deepfakes we've seen to date have been kind of pre-recorded, right? Pre-made. They're still images or video images. What he claims is he was on a Zoom call with his CFO and multiple other employees of the company. All of them were dynamically generated in real time and all appeared to be real, right? So we all could be fake, if we took that, right? So that's really what we're facing, is the most elaborate now moves to that, right? And as Bruce was just saying, what about the newsroom? What about replicating that in real time, right? And so the level of deception has gone up very, very high. I think the other thing we're facing is, that a lot of Americans, maybe up to 1/3, don't necessarily want the truth, right? They want a truth that aligns with their belief structure, at least right now, against the political backdrop of the country. But regardless, I think we certainly, as a trade association for media and entertainment, support all these efforts, and a focus on how do we have the maximum creativity and storytelling. So use this as a tool, but at the same time within the kinds of fact or fiction, right? Bruce used deception. I'm going to say there's fact and there's fiction, but we got to make sure we don't have fiction masquerading as fact. And that's really what we're talking about when we're talking about deception. So I think we're making great inroads. I think, in terms of working technologically, C2PA is a huge move forward, but at the same time, the receivers actually have to care. So I think we need to continue to work on the ethics of how this all plays out.
Thank you, Richard. We've got several questions coming in, and I want to get to a few of them. So let's get started here. One I want to pick up right here from the start is that question is, at what point does a photorealistic drawing or animation become considered a deepfake instead of a valid form of artistic expression? Kind of a philosophical question to some degree there. Who wants to talk about that?
Well, I'm happy to. I think it picks right up on is this fiction masquerading as fact, right? Animation's been around a long time. The whole creative process, especially in movies, is, how do I dispel my doubt, right? You want to be there. So as a creative tool, it's amazing. I think we just have to watch how it's used and always know that, this wasn't actually real. It either isn't a real actor or it isn't a real, taking position. And I think, again, looking at authenticity and what's happening is one way to do it.
I was on a panel on Monday where we talked about the Copyright Office and folks trying to copyright AI generated work, and what was the U.S. Copyright Office opinion on the percentage of human contribution to the work versus the AI's contribution to the work. Still a lot of unresolved questions there. It's not all decided yet. There's still things up in the air. Let's see.
Well, on that point, I would just add, I think that, using the term deepfake in a pejorative sense, we should also incorporate in that not only, the sort of definition that Richard had mentioned, but also, as an element of that, the question of whether the person, if it is a person that's involved, who's depicted in those deepfakes, has given their consent to it and is, sort of the ethics of that. I think that Alexandra mentioned that as well earlier, because really there's sort of inbound and the outbound part of this. The outbound part we've talked a lot about, which is trust, authenticity, and ways to verify the legitimacy of content as someone viewing or consuming that content. But on the inbound part of it, there's a real question about abuse. There's a question about consent. There's a question about how this whole technology can be used ethically. So to the extent we're going to, use deepfake as a pejorative term, which I'm fine with, we should incorporate both of those pieces, I think.
Thank you. Walter's hand's up. Let's go.
Thank you very much, Will. So in my view, from sort of some of the policy discussions that I'm seeing, and that's in part to echo precisely what Duncan just said, like the term deepfake is a normative term in and of itself. If we look at sort of the wider branch of this of these kinds of new types of content, perhaps a slightly more technical term is AI-generated synthetic media, right? But the difference here is that we're actually looking precisely, when we're using the term deepfake, we're actually making ethical judgments. And even there is stages in between. So we can look at, say, AI-generated synthetic media as some kinds of artistic expression that we can use to enhance some of our imageries or some videos in a way that is perhaps that wouldn't be possible before. We can look at deepfakes as sort of some kinds of sort of the negative expression from malicious actors. But there's also a space in between, something that Henry Eider, a close friend of mine who also works in the field, described as gray fakes, which are basically like uses of these kinds of AI-generated synthetic media that are somewhere ethically questionable. They might not be totally wrong, but we're also not feeling comfortable with that. And that could be, for example, there was a case in South Korea of a mother recreating the voice and the image of her deceased daughter. And these are sort of like some uses that we find a bit strange, a bit like we cannot exactly judge where we are, but there is different ethical layers that I think will necessitate particular kinds of languages in order to develop the right kinds of policy and regulatory solutions on the back of that.
Thank you. Let's see, another question real quick. When it comes to the notion that, back to Bruce, the watermarking, the question says, so are we saying that Meta's attempt to watermark AI-generated images potentially is flawed as watermarks can be removed? What's your thought on that? Because that was mentioned in both by OpenAI and Meta that it's not a perfect solution.
Yeah, there really is no silver bullet, but 3 bronze bullets do a really good job. Watermarking, fingerprinting, and cryptographically embedded metadata. And the trick is each of them have strengths and weaknesses, and they actually mirror each other's strengths and weaknesses. So by combining them, you can use a watermark to say there should be cryptographic metadata. If it's not here, here's how you look it up with a fingerprint. That combination is the way you go. The term watermarking has been genericized a little bit. It's become like Kleenex. It is not an accurate description of what the technology is. The Partnership on AI just put out a very good document where a lot of people in the industry from a lot of different companies got together and said, here's what the words really mean. And I really encourage everybody to read the Partnerships on AI's taxonomy for this work. That'll help. But they all build on each other. You're seeing the industry come together. There's a trend now to say, do this once, do it right, and it will ultimately involve all 3 of those technologies.
Terrific. Well, we're now at just 3 minutes out. So what I want to do a little lightning round around the horn here to ask folks, what are your best hopes for the year to come with regards to utilization of AI talent in a world where that's going to be a hybrid blend of both provenance stories and also detection stories? Because I sat on a panel Monday with 2 detection companies in the music space that are doing a really good job and doing really good work, but understandably, to your point, Bruce, there's no like magic bullet. There's multiple approaches to minimize and reduce kind of risk mitigation around this story. Let's start with Alex. What are your thoughts about your hopes for how this story plays out, the narrative unfolds?
Sure. So I think just building on what Bruce ended with, I think my hope is that there are multi-pronged efforts to move this industry forward in the right way. We've talked a lot about different product features like watermarking and everything. We've talked a little bit about the law, right? And perhaps my biased view, but is the law is simply going to take time to catch up. We've seen it over time with history, especially in an election year, especially with so many other factors. And right now, no federal right of publicity. There are a lot of headwinds, but we have to keep moving the ball forward. I think the third important element that I hope for is, and many of you have touched on this, is this alliance, right? Coalitions and partnerships across the industry and with big tech for that matter, to help move the industry forward. And for me, that's about precedent setting. It's about creating the right way to work with artists. It's providing artists ownership and control and permission to their digital identities, so that for participants who want to work with somebody in the right way, there's a way for them to do so. And there's a way for artists to be compensated for that. So I know we're short on time. That's the quick answer.
Walter, Duncan, wants to last thoughts?
Sure. Well, I would just say, and I think this is all the panelists have sort of hinted at this. We really can't let the perfect be the enemy of the good in moving the ball forward in every area here. And several people have noted, this takes a sort of a mosaic of different pieces of protection, and putting them together is how we're going to ultimately end up with a picture that we can live with. And whether that's collective bargaining, whether that's legislative efforts, and I hope everyone will support the No Fakes Act and the No AI Frauds Act. We really need them to provide rights for artists and others in their own image and likeness at the federal level. And it's education and coalition building and all of this. But I think, there's a risk of option paralysis where people sort of see like so many things going on, they don't know what to do or how to focus on it. And I do think every step that we all could take together to move the ball forward, we need to take, even if it doesn't result in the perfect solution, as long as we are bettering the situation and moving in the right direction, that's the ultimate key.
Thank you. Well put. And we are now at time at the top of the hour. I want to thank all of our panelists today for your incredible insights and bringing your thoughts and passionate understanding of how this is a complex set of issues that overlap and interrelate. And I wanted to say thank you so much for your time today. And we'll try to answer our questions offline that came in through the chat, but I want to pass it back to our next moderator, who is Simon.